So by way of introduction, I will introduce myself. I am Leah Paley. I am the CEO of the Anne Arundel County Food Bank, and we are so grateful to have you here today. A few housekeeping reminders. We already talked about this being recorded, so please keep that in mind. Please keep yourself muted. We will have a chance at the end for questions. We are going to use the chat box for questions just because we have a larger audience and we want to be mindful of your time. We're intending for the presentation to be roughly 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you're having any technical difficulties, you can put a message in the chat box for Melanie Kincaid, my colleague, and she can try to answer that. So in addition to recording this, we will be sharing the slides post-presentation, so you can expect to receive that as well as a link to the recording. So thank you again for joining us, and we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And before I do, I wanted to take a minute just to say thank you to a few people who we have here with us today. First and foremost, my colleagues, Sarah Riley and Melanie Kincaid. We have a few other colleagues, but Sarah and Melanie are instrumental in developing our impact report and also coordinating this presentation today. So thank you to the both of them. And then we do have at least one member of our board who I saw pop on, Mary Lou Howe. So thank you, Mary Lou, for all you do as a member of our board. And I do see at least one of our wonderful elected officials in the County of Anne Arundel, Delegate Mark Chang. Thank you for being here. And if I've missed anyone, I'll try to run through it towards the end and give shout outs to those who have also joined us. And thank you to all of our community partners, our county partners, and other supporters. We're grateful to have you. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into our first slide. And we're going to kick things off by just doing some celebrating of what we did in the year that just ended. So we did quite a bit. It continued to be a really big year for the Anne Arundel County Food Bank. Over 4 million pounds of food distributed. 4 million is a lot. And of the 4 million, 840,000 pounds were fresh produce. We really are targeting that nourishing, healthy food items and making sure that we get that out to our partners so that they can distribute it to our neighbors experiencing food insecurity. Speaking of our partners, we had 86 agency partners that we worked closely with in communities across the county. And many of them are in targeted communities where the level of poverty is higher, where it might be considered a food desert. So that is something that is first and foremost in our minds as we are looking to identify new and continue partnerships with groups in the community. So on average, our partners were providing food to roughly 38,400 people each month. And that is a significant increase over where we were in the year before COVID came onto the scene. So when we look at how much food we were distributing and to how many people in the year prior to COVID, we've actually seen a 29% increase when we look at the year that just ended and the year before COVID came onto the scene. So clearly, even though COVID is not quite what it had been when it first came on and was impacting many of us, it is still not returned to where we are. We are still experiencing long lines. We are still experiencing many more people requesting services. And so we want you to be mindful of that. And I know many of you who are the boots on the ground are seeing this every day. Let's talk more about the community and your support. So next slide, please. We had over 150 volunteers support our work in our warehouse, assisting with driving and many other projects throughout the year, over 2,200 hours. And I will say, because of COVID and the second surge that we experienced, many of this volunteer work was actually done in the second half of the fiscal year. So in a very short window of time, 6 to 8 months, this is when we clocked most of those hours. And it was absolutely instrumental in helping us meet our mission. So to all of those volunteers on the call, kudos to you. Thank you for helping us, because we cannot do what we do without you. And speaking of our volunteers and what they do to help us, primarily it's sorting our product that we receive that's donated, it's checking expiration dates, it's boxing items up, and we received quite a lot. So in the last fiscal year, over 405,000 pounds of food was donated from you, from the community, from the drives that individuals held, that schools held, that civic groups held. And we were really excited to see that that number has bounced back a bit. As you remember, throughout the couple of years where COVID was at its height, we were all being told, no, 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 don't gather, don't hold food drives. School was not operating the same way. And so a lot of the drives that we relied on, they dried up for some time. So we started to see some of these drives come back onto the scene. The Stamp Out Hunger, the schools were returning through their Harvest for the Hungry. So we were really thrilled to see an increase over what we did in the year prior. Very important because as you will hear as we continue with the presentation, there are other areas where we are continuing to experience a shortfall in food that we're receiving. So I want to talk a little bit more about partnerships. So if we go on to the next slide, we can highlight some of those key partnerships that we established this year or else continued. So many of you might know that in the county of Anne Arundel, we are responsible, the food bank is responsible for working in partnership with the Maryland Food Bank to administer the Emergency Food Assistance Program. That's the TFAP program. And so there are 30 plus partner agencies in our county who receive certain food items, and certain individuals are eligible for those food items based on their income. So we were able to expand our partnership through the USDA funded program, but it is a new program and it's actually called the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. Now that's not a new program generally, but for us it was a new program. And this program targets food insecure seniors in our community. So we're really thrilled to team up with the Maryland Department of Aging, the Anne Arundel County Department of Aging and Disabilities, and then Anne Arundel County, the Housing Commission, to identify food insecure seniors living in certain low-income housing complexes. And we are still actively recruiting individuals to participate, but we currently have roughly 60 households signed up. And we are thrilled to be able to offer this program, which they can continue to receive on a monthly basis food items. So this is to supplement some of the other programs that they may participate in. We also partnered with the Department of General Services. This is the Maryland Department of General Services. They have been phenomenal partners over the year. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight that they did in partnership with us in the fiscal year that just ended was a huge diaper and baby item drive. So they reached out to us and said, we have 2 truckloads of diapers and wipes, and we want to get them to you, and we want you to be able to give them out to the community and to some other partners across the state of Maryland. So we coordinated a large distribution day back in June, and over 40 agencies participated in that drive. And so that morning, our staff worked very hard. It was a hot, sweaty day, and we got all of those items out. So that was a really huge success. And as we all know, those items are extremely expensive, and many government assistance programs like SNAP and WIC do not cover diapers and wipes. So wonderful to be able to partner with groups who are doing great work across the state. Really proud of our member agency advisory committee, which launched this year. Many of our partners had expressed to us that they wanted there to be more collaborative opportunities, resource sharing amongst our partners. And so in response to that wonderful suggestion, our staff worked to identify individuals who are lead volunteers or active volunteers within their pantry, and to develop a member agency advisory committee. So we do have a wonderful cross-section from the different parts of the county, the western part, Annapolis, South County, the northern part, in order to make sure we have each of those areas to have representation. And so far we've had, I think, 3 meetings, and really just a lot of idea sharing and thinking through what are the priorities, and then also how can this group help to inform not only our staff, but also our board when we look at the bigger picture. So one of the individuals serving on this committee is actually now serving on our board. So we're thrilled to have that individual, and that's been a great perspective to add to our board. And for moving forward, we will always have 1 seat designated to a member of the member agency advisory committee. So really thrilled about that. So I'm going to turn now to talk about our organizational infrastructure. So if we can look at the next slide, great. A lot going on in this picture, so I'll back up and explain. We had the opportunity to engage in a warehouse efficiency analysis, and this was back in the fall. What we were looking at is the flow of products coming into our building. So when we purchase items, when we receive donations, we followed the path that each product took within our facility. And for those that have not had the opportunity to come out yet, this is kind of that aerial view of what our building looks like. And what we identified is that many of the products are taking a lot of steps. And actually in that lower picture, and I think that's my colleague Susan there, she is actually walking through the building and measuring the number of steps that it took for a particular item to come in, go to its temporary home, and then go back out when it is going out for distribution. And so we worked with a consultant to identify ways that we could reorganize the flow of the building. And so we are currently in the process of implementing some of those recommendations. And then just in addition to that, there were a number of upgrades that we needed to do. We are on the Crownsville Hospital property. We are in a very old building. So of course the normal wear and tear, but there have been some wonderful surprises that presented for us across the year that we needed to address: issues with generator, refrigerator, air conditioning, as well as just dealing with some remediation of environmental hazards. And we were really fortunate also to just be able to make upgrades to our fire and security systems and give our office and restrooms a facelift. And a lot of these projects were funded through a very generous private foundation grant that we received. And so we were very grateful to have the opportunity to make these upgrades. So wonderful to have done that. And I did want to, before we go on and talk about what we're doing now, share just a story. I've had the opportunity in my first year here to spend some time with a few of our wonderful agency partners out at their sites. And I do believe we have the wonderful Dr. Barbara Palmer with us today, who I wanted to highlight what she and the wonderful folks at Kingdom Celebration, Kingdom Care are doing. We, my colleague and I, Sarah, had the opportunity to go out a few months ago and meet with Dr. Palmer and her colleague Christian, and they are doing inspirational work. And I'm sure many of you are very familiar with them, and you are all doing inspirational work, but it was just so wonderful to walk through their facility and to hear about their daycare and their program that is an alternative high school, and they are working with teen moms and they are able to give them free childcare. They're able to get life skills. They're able to get therapeutic services. So they're not just a site that does a food distribution. They are looking at the root causes of poverty and providing a holistic approach to addressing the needs of our members of our community. And they are located in the Odenton area, but serving individuals outside of that area too. So kudos to Dr. Palmer and her team. Thank you for allowing us to come out and inviting us to have that tour. It is just really exciting to see what our community groups are doing, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you all. So let's pivot, everyone's favorite word during the pandemic, and talk a little bit about the current situation. I know I don't need to tell anyone on this call that we are currently experiencing very high inflation and the impacts of that. So costs are up quite a bit. 12% is the number that we are reporting now. And one thing that shocked us as we were looking into this further is that on average, and this is in our geographic area, households are spending $311 more per month than they were a year ago on the same basic goods and services. $311. That is hitting everyone, but especially our neighbors who are living below the poverty line, who are having difficulty just paying the rent. So we are, as a result, continuing to see a high level of need. And when we actually look at the number of pantries that we partnered with prior to the pandemic, which is 42, and we look at how many we partnered with last year, which is 86, we can all do that math. we are seeing double the number of pantry partners across the county than we were just a few years ago. So the need remains high. And just in addition to the number of sites, the volume and how that compares. When we look at just the number of households visiting our pantries, the total number of households across the entire year and in the year prior to the pandemic was 61,000. That's up to 119,000 in the year that just ended. So again, double what we're looking at. So let's dive a little deeper and talk about food insecurity and poverty in our county. I know that many of you probably had the opportunity to go to one of the presentations that was held by Dr. Pam Brown in collaboration with the Community Foundation, the needs assessment, the poverty at Miss Plenty. And a few of us at the food bank did also have that opportunity to participate and to read the data-rich needs assessment. And there's quite a bit in there, and unfortunately, the situation has not shifted significantly since that last report was released. So roughly around the same percentage of individuals in our county are still experiencing food insecurity. It's just over 8%. That's just under 48,000 residents in our county. And when we actually look at food deserts, so that's where communities were typically urban or rural communities without ready access to fresh, healthy, and affordable foods. That number is actually 74,000. So while some people might not be considered food insecure, they're still living in a community where they don't have ready access to fresh and healthy food. One thing that I think is really important, and I know Dr. Brown always does a phenomenal job talking about, while there are 7% of our neighbors living below the poverty line, which is 26,500 for a family of 4. That really isn't a realistic baseline to use for individuals who are struggling to make ends meet, who are looking at trying to, the standard is paying no more than 30% of your income towards your rent. So the United Way has come up with a report, the ALICE report. They use this ALICE household, that's asset limited, income constrained, employed, and this threshold, this survival budget that a family would need in order to be able to sustain. And that survival budget for a family of 4, that same family of 4 that when we talked about the poverty line for a family of 4 being 26,500, well, a survival budget is 87,000 for that same family. So there's quite a few more households than we speak of, and individuals we speak of who are actually truly struggling to make ends meet. And that number, in fact, in the most recent report from the United Way was 212,000 households in our county. Anne Arundel County has just around 600,000 people. So 212,000 households, that's 35% of the households in our county, are below that ALICE threshold. Going to move on now and talk about what's on the horizon. So we all know food is costing a lot more. We talked about how that is being seen just by way of an increased need and the continued need that our partners are seeing. But we're also experiencing that. And I imagine for those of our partners who are also purchasing food, you are seeing this too. So for us who have relationships with wholesale vendors, we're seeing upwards of 124% increases in certain products. So I like to share pasta sauce. For us, a case of pasta sauce last year at this time was around $9. At last count, it was just under $19 for a case of pasta sauce. So that means that the dollars we receive from the government, from you, our business supporters, are not going as far as they used to, which means we are spending more money more quickly. As I'm sure many of you are, just as an average everyday citizen when you go to the grocery store. Another area where we are, drawing our attention to is around food donations that are going down or going away. Now, you heard me say earlier that food donations from individuals has gone up, yay. Where we're seeing it go down actually is in our retail rescue program. So we have a wonderful partnership with a number of retail locations. Think your local grocery store, perhaps it's like a Target or a Walmart. And we are able to pick up product that perhaps might be damaged but still usable. It's at its date where it can last sell. And so those items we have seen a decrease, and we have not bumped back up to where we were prior to the pandemic. So when we compared where we were prior to the pandemic to the year that just ended, we were actually down 130,000 pounds from that retail rescue. It's quite a bit. And when we think about we're serving more, there's a 29% increase. That means that these donations are not keeping pace with what we need in order to be able to meet the need. We suspect that retailers have less to give, that perhaps they have improved their efficiencies. And so that's one of the reasons they have less to give. And we all are familiar with supply chain issues, whether it's I know the formula, I was even hearing earlier today, formula continues to be an issue. So there's a lot going on that's at play. And there isn't so much that we can influence to increase the donations there. We've also had the opportunity to receive food from our partners at Maryland Food Bank for no cost. Typically in the past, prior to the pandemic, Maryland Food Bank, if we were to go to them and order certain items, we would pay a price. And because of the generous federal support that came to the state that made its way to the Maryland Food Bank, we and other partners, some of you are probably on this call, have been able to receive those food items for free, which has been wonderful. In fact, last year, over $600,000 worth of food for the Maryland Food Bank, from the Maryland Food Bank to us. So a huge savings. And unfortunately, the Maryland Food Bank is in a similar position to us, where this federal funding is nearing the end. It's taking its course. And so they are going back to their model, which is to charge their partners for purchasing food items. So we are keeping this front and center as we move forward and try to think about what we can do to stretch our dollars and make them last. Speaking of federal dollars, we have been very fortunate to partner with the county and to be able to receive federal funding, most recently the ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act funding. And that has totaled over $1 million each year for the last 3 years. And that has been huge, absolutely huge, in helping us meet the need that could not be met through just the community donations of food, the individual dollars, which do play a huge role, but just not enough during COVID. So we received this year $1.3 million to support our food efforts in meeting the continued need. In the first quarter, so the first 3 months of our fiscal year, we had spent $550,000 on food. So almost half of that total amount. And that is because food is expensive and the need remains high. So we have been very fortunate to have a wonderful relationship with the county and our partners who oversee these funds, and just to talk through some strategies. And we are making some internal changes in order to adjust and make sure that we're able to continue to support our community members. But as we look forward, we are going to have to come up with ways to be able to continue to meet the need. And that's what we're going to talk about next. What are we doing? So we talked about what the challenges are. What are we doing? So before I dive into some of our strategies in order to be able to continue to meet the need, I'm really excited to share. And some of you may know this, but for those who don't, hot off the press, we have been very, very excited about the following. So we have, through a grant, and this was a federal program, a capacity building grant, been able to purchase a mobile pantry, the first of its kind in our county, at least to the best of my knowledge, the first of its kind. And so really thrilled about that. My colleague, Susan Thomas, our COO, she took the lead on submitting that application. And so now our programs team is putting their heads together to decide what does that look like. So we have the vehicle is being designed. We are expecting that by the end of the spring, beginning of the summer, we will have it in our possession. And we envision that this unit, this mobile pantry, will visit areas of the county, primarily those where there are those gaps, where we're looking at food deserts, and we'll be looking to be able to provide food. And this is a client choice model so that clients have the capacity to pick the items that they will use. So we're really thrilled. More information to come. Stay tuned, but really, really excited about that. So how are we going to fund filling that mobile pantry and continuing to support our partners? And I think everyone on this call knows, but if not, we are very proud of our model, which for the last 35 years has been to provide food for free. Food is free to our partners. We know how tirelessly you work to be able to do what you do. Many of you are 100% volunteer run groups. And so we want to be able to eliminate any barriers to receiving food. So in order to continue to keep this model and have this model stay, we need to do some of the following. So internally, when we look at food drives and in-kind donations, our team is kicking butt and trying to add food drives and spread the word around the need. And we did talk about the increase in the number of donations from the community. We're really looking forward to see what happens this fall for those of you with students in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, that they participate in the Harvest for the Hungry program. And we keep hearing about schools who are saying, this is the best year that we've had, or my colleague was saying that a lot of them are coming back to get more boxes. So we're really thrilled to see how that lands. And many other groups who participate in annual drives, our friends with the Anne Arundel County Realtors Association do a fantastic drive every year as well. So this is our peak season of giving, and we're going to continue to drum up support. As far as fundraising, we are fortunate to have colleagues who are dedicating their time and energy to building relationships with individual donors, trying to grow our corporate and business sponsorship, and also to grow foundational support. So that we have grant requests that we're submitting, and we are working with these individuals who are in our community, who are interested in learning more about our work. Excited to announce that as of roughly 3.5 months into the year, we are at 26% of our funding goal, which is $3.6 million for this year. Awareness is key. Of course, around fundraising and some of the challenges, not only for our organization, but first and foremost, the obstacles that our community members are facing with inflation and the food insecurity challenges. We are all over social media. If you're not following us, hopefully you consider doing so after this call is over, so you can continue to learn how you can get involved. And we have just done a lot to engage individuals. We have a lot of business groups that are coming out to volunteer with us and really want to give back. I mentioned that we have a few of our elected officials with us today, and thank you for joining. They very much care about the work, not only of the food bank, but of all of the wonderful groups throughout our county. And we are very fortunate in Anne Arundel County, I will say that, in getting our elected officials to support our efforts. I know that our organization has been fortunate to receive some capital funding in order to continue with some of our building repairs that we talked about earlier. And we're looking to continue conversations, and many of our elected officials have come out to visit with us and to hear some of our challenges and celebrate with us on some of our victories. So we will continue to talk to them and work with them in order to make sure that our community members are served. So last, before we take some questions, our call to action. So to each and every one of you who have taken the time today to be with us, you are key supporters, you are key contributors, and we are so grateful for you. We cannot do our work without you. I know you're probably all out everywhere and anywhere talking about the great work of your group if you're affiliated with a local nonprofit, your connection to the Anne Arundel County Food Bank. And we just encourage you to continue having those conversations, educating your neighbors and members of your networks about the issues. And I know most of you are doing that, but challenging you to do that more, especially now when we see that that spotlight isn't so much on food insecurity the way that it was. And we'd love to have you out. If you haven't come out here yet for a tour and you're interested, or you'd like to sign up for a volunteership, we love to have you. Host a food drive, lots of ways to get involved. So we do hope that you will take action and join with us and come out and visit us if you haven't already. And before I take questions, one plug for an upcoming event that we have. And but when I say upcoming, I mean like 6 months from now, but you can pencil us in for the 18th of May. And that's our second annual Feeding Hope event. For those of you who had the opportunity to join us earlier this year for our first annual, it was a lot of fun. There was great food. We had a band. We had over 200 people in attendance. It was a fantastic event, and so very grateful to all that could join us. We had 14 plus vendors with food, and couldn't have asked for a better day. And we're grateful to our friends at Homestead Garden for hosting us there. So with that, I would love to, one, say thank you, and to two, open this up for questions and hear from you. So I'm I think gonna check the chat box and make sure I haven't missed anything. And I do see we have a few other officials who have joined us, and I did want to say thank you to Delegate Henson and to Senator Elfreth. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Any questions? Let's see, no questions at this time. We'll give you a moment just in case. Well, if none.
So, Leah?
Yes.
Mary Lou,
yes.
From the board. So if you were going to ask, or I would say give advice, what right now, given where we are and what our needs are, all these external factors that are impacting the food bank, what one thing would you suggest that all of us on the call could do just to help to get what would you say would be a call to action for all of us that would be fairly easy to do?
Yeah, well, fairly easy to do. I guess that's all relative, but that's a great question, Mary Lou. So thank you, and I appreciate everything you do personally to support the organization. I mean, I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is just to make sure that you are speaking with your elected officials, and if you're in Annapolis, having a conversation with your alder member, if as a county resident, reaching out to your county council member's office, the county executive's office, talking with your delegates and your state senator, and just to let them know that, this is an important, that means something to you, that you have concerns about the future funding that may be available to support maybe not only our work, but also the work of so many other wonderful organizations to support food insecurity and lots of other human service needs, because this isn't just a funding issue for our organization. This is an issue for many. And if we're not calling people on the phone and knocking on their doors and letting them know this is an issue, I bet your bottom dollar that there are many others who are doing that regarding their issue. So it is so critical for us to make sure that people are aware that this remains an issue. And I know we have elections coming up, and there might be some new people, new faces, but that's even more an opportunity to introduce yourself and to share what issues are important to you. So I would say if that's something you're comfortable with, and there are ways to search for, if you're not sure who is my elected official, you can go onto the website, and I know the Maryland General Assembly has a website where you can search for your elected officials, and it pulls up everyone from the county all the way up to your federal representatives, and that's a great way to get started. I do see we have a hand up from Ralph.
Yes, are there any food deserts in Anne Arundel County, and is there a relationship between the the food bank and the local groceries to try to coordinate the distribution of food shortages?
Yeah, great question. And I apologize for the oversight. We have a representative from Delegate Dana Jones on the call, and thank you for dropping that link into the box. So Ralph, in response to your questions, so we do have relationship with local grocery stores, and that's actually through that retail rescue program. We have, I think, about 25 stores within the county that we are assigned to. And there are some stores that actually don't participate through the retail rescue program that we've established relationships with, and also with local farmers markets, some local farms. Shout out to Senator Elfreth, who connected us with the Wild Kid Acres farm in the Edgewater area, and we have been the beneficiary of their first harvest. So we are coming up with some creative ways to fill the gap. Even that program, the commodity supplemental food program, that is another way to kind of bring in resources without having to utilize dollars. And to the first part of your question around food deserts, there are 17 census tracts within the county that classify as a food desert. And that includes a total of roughly 74,000 people in our county who are in a food desert. So I do hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Well, wonderful. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for joining us today. To all of you who are joining us from one of our partners, thank you for all the work that you do. I say it all the time, but we literally cannot do what we do without you. So thank you very much. Thank you to our staff who've joined us today, and again to our elected officials who've made the time to be here. We're grateful for your continued support.